He was a wanderer. He just moved about, no community, no attachments. He just seemed to walk wherever he went. He just was a nomad. Now, one day as he was out walking, a wind kicked up. It came from the east, another from the west, one from the north, and one from the south. And you can well imagine when all of those winds got together, well, they scooped this nomad up into its midst and spun him around, turning him everywhere with bits of debris, leaves, twigs, rubbish, everything you can imagine, into one big, huge storm. It was such an angry, vicious wind. It seemed as if it was reaching up even into the heavens. And when it did, it plucked a leaf from the Garden of Eden and turned it and churned it into that mix. When those winds finally settled, they each went back to their own corners of the earth, leaving this man simply on the ground in the midst of all this debris. He didn't seem to mind. He was used to the elements. He simply dusted himself off a wee bit and stood up. And those winds had created a path he had never walked on before. And so he simply moved one step at a time. But as he moved, well, things began to filter into his mind, things he had never heard of before in all his life. Stories, epics, math, geography, history, you name it. It just was filling his head like a great big train wreck. But on and on he walked. And with every step, more and more information. Well, you can well imagine that after several hours of just wandering like he always did, well, his head was about to explode. He decided he needed to rest. He was exhausted from all of this information. He simply sat down underneath a tree, leaned up against the bark, and then removed those dirty sandals from his feet. Oh, he slept. He slept like a baby, like he hadn't slept in years. And when he awoke, he felt good. He felt lightheaded. Oh, he felt like himself again, and he was content. So he put back on those sandals and he began to walk. And as he walked, with every step, once again, information kept flowing into his head. But now, there was something else. Chatter. He could hear voices, and they were talking about a princess, unwell, in need of health, a doctor, but yet the royal physicians could not cure her. The king willing to pay. Well, as he walked, suddenly information about medicines and combinations and what to do was filling his mind. So he made his way straight to that very palace. He told the guards, "I'm here to cure the princess." They scoffed at him. I mean, he was so disheveled and unkempt. Impossible, they said. But again he said, "Please tell the king I'm here to heal his daughter." And so they did their duty, went to the king. When the king heard that there was a man, a stranger, and very unclean, well, he was ready to say no, but his wife was listening. And she said, "Our daughter's life is on the line. None of your doctors have cured her yet. Let the man in." So the king agreed, 2 conditions: a washing station so that he could have clean hands and a clean face, and that the royal physicians were to be in her room, and they were to watch for magic, trickery, sorcery, anything diabolical, because the king would have none of that. And so it happened that the man was ushered in, washed, brought to her room. The minute he walked in, well, he felt all those eyes staring at him, and the physicians looking him up and down. I mean, he was no match for their wit and wisdom. And yet, he seemed to place his hand over the girl's body, and right away he told them what he needed. This herb, that, this liquid, that liquid, this item from the gardens, this vegetable, oils, even water from the royal well, a mortar, pestle, a few tools, and they went immediately, the guards, to go and get what he requested. And all the while he seemed to have this sixth sense of what to do. Oh, he cut, he measured, he ground down some of those herbs, and everything was in with precision, very conscientious of every move he made. Soon a bit of liquid was added to a powder, and he put some balm upon the girl's lips. An hour later, he put his hand above her body. Her body was less cold. Again, he began to do what he did best. The measuring, the cutting, the grinding, the mixing. No magic. Another tincture, another balm was made, placed upon her lips, and on it went. Hour after hour, he put his hand above her body. Soon her temperature was rising. They could see the pink coming back into her pale skin. Soon the eyeballs were moving back and forth underneath the closed lids. And on he continued to mix and to measure, adding this and that. Soon her lips were parting. He made a liquid that he could spoon feed into her. She took it. Soon the eyes were open, and she recognized those physicians. So she felt safe, even though there was a stranger. And on until her body was warm. Her cheeks were pink and rosy. Her lips were parting. She was starting to speak. She asked to sit up, and they helped her. And then the man knew. One more tincture. He mixed again a whole bunch of ingredients, plus the royal water, put it in a goblet, and she drank. And then she asked for her parents. Oh, the king and queen were brought in, and they were elated. The man slunk back into the shadows. He was a stranger in this realm. It wasn't a place he felt comfortable. Once the king felt assured that his daughter was well, he asked for a guard to take this stranger amongst them, the healer, to a place where he could rest, give him a good meal, and the king would come later and pay him handsomely. The king again spent a little more time with his daughter and then ordered all the physicians out. Meet me in my throne room. When he was ready and assured that his daughter was going to be healthy and well again, he left and he met with his doctors. How's it possible? Was there magic, trickery, sorcery? Tell me, I need to know. But they shrugged their shoulders and they said he simply used things that we have here in our gardens and in the palace kitchen. We don't know how he knew what to do and how to mix and when to use that combination, but no magic, we promise you. That night, well, they all slept like babies and all was well. In the morning, when the king got up, he went straight to the treasury. He got some gold and some silver, filled it in a bag, and he went to see the man. Now, all the while as he was walking through the palace, there was something just nagging at the back of his head, and that was the question: how can this disheveled, unkept man be so wise? How did he know how to heal my daughter? And once again, when he walked in and saw the man, well, he knew he had to ask. So first he thanked him and gave the gold, the silver, and then he said, my dear man, forgive me. I know it's rude to ask, but you just don't look wise like my physicians. You don't look like you've ever even been to school. I mean, look at you. How is it possible that you knew how to heal my daughter? And the man looked straight at the king and then looked down at his sandals and said, well, it's because of my sandals. What? Said the king. What did you just say? I've told you the truth. It's because of my sandals. And if I were to take them off this very minute and give them to you and you were to put them on, well, Your Majesty, you'd be as smart as I am right now. Now the king, He was wise, that was true. And suddenly he realized wisdom is power, power is wisdom. And well, you know, he needed to have those sandals. And so he offered a trade for half the kingdom. Well, the man thought that was a good idea. He didn't really need these old dirty sandals, so he whipped them off and handed them, but the king couldn't take it. Someone rushed in and took them and brought them to a washerwoman. And then the king ordered a guard to take the man out from the palace and to go and show him his half of the kingdom, because a bargain was a bargain. And so the man took his sack of gold, and by the time he got out and had his bare feet upon the land, his land, well, he was content, and more so because his head was finally empty and felt light again, and he began to wander. In the meantime, the king sat upon his throne, had removed his own shoes, and he was waiting. The washerwoman had those sandals. She plucked off bits of sand and stones and twigs and dirt and debris and a nasty leaf. It was odd looking, and it was wedged underneath the sole of that sandal. She plucked it. It was hard, then dropped it on the ground with the other dirt, and she washed the sandals. She washed and she washed, she dried, and then she rubbed with all kinds of wonderful royal oils, sprinkled with perfume, and when that leather was supple and soft, fit for a king, she gave the sandals to the guard. The sandals were brought into the throne room. Oh, the king, he grabbed them immediately, put one on each foot, tied them up, and he stood. He walked from this side to that side and this side to that side. And then he even walked around his throne 3 times, his chair. And he sat back down. He slumped, for he was no wiser now in these new sandals than he had been in his own shoes. He immediately called for that washerwoman to be brought into his chambers. And when she was petrified. She said, "Were you not pleased with the way I cleaned them?" And he said, "They're clean, but they're not working." "Oh, what do you mean?" "I don't know. What did you pull off of them?" And she described everything she pulled off, including that leaf, that odd-looking leaf that was stuck. He said, "What did you do with it?" "I dropped it on the floor, picked up my broom, opened the door, and wished all the debris out, as I normally would." "Well, where's it now?" "The wind picked it up." And to this day, that leaf from the Garden of Eden, from the tree of knowledge, is floating about. I have lots of leaves outside. I'm hoping it's in my garden, but maybe it's in yours.
Well done.